Hey everyone, this is Anirban here. Welcome you all to another episode of the email show. Today I have Auroriele. She is from California, USA, and she has been doing email marketing for the last 5 years, and it also includes B2B messaging. Earlier, she used to be a content marketing specialist and a content writer. Also, she used to be an editorial team. Welcome to the podcast, Auroriele.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Could you please talk about yourself? Like, how did you start email marketing and how did you start your journey?
Yeah, so I started about 15 years ago in content marketing. Well, actually, journalism before that, and then content marketing. And so I've always touched email. I used like my first campaign was for at my first job for a law firm doing a promotion for a seminar. And so I always touched it, but I didn't really start specializing in it till 5 years ago. And then I really dug in and started learning all about deliverability and automation, as well as focusing more on B2B SaaS.
So you mostly have expertise in SaaS?
Well, the last 5, 6 years, primarily in B2B SaaS, but before that, I worked with coaches, course creators, e-commerce, and then prior to that, heavily in services, B2C and B2B, and prior to that, law and education. So yeah, I've worked in several industries, but the last 6 years has been primarily in B2B and B2B SaaS.
So mostly you have worked in info and SaaS. You haven't worked in e-commerce that much, right?
Not that much. I haven't done a lot of e-commerce, but I am learning more about e-commerce and planning on getting into B2B e-commerce.
Do you remember your first campaign?
Yeah, it was a promotional campaign for a law firm. Yeah, promoting a seminar. Back then they did a lot more stuff in person. So it was an in-person seminar educating clients about a legal issue.
So what is one tactic that always works for you in email marketing?
Knowing your customer, because relevance is one of the most important metrics in email marketing. We're interrupting their days when we show up in their inbox. So the last thing you want to do is waste their time, right? That's the quick path to losing your place in the inbox and being unsubscribed. And so knowing your customers, doing surveys, periodically to find out if what you're sending is resonating, and also doing customer interviews to find out, what they're struggling with. Because it's not just about, knowing their pain points and goals at one point in time, but how they change because email is this continuous relationship with them, right?
As you see, currently people are using AI heavily. So do you think that this knowing your customer or building a relationship with the customer is getting hampered?
I do, because I think people are misusing AI. It's a tool for executing copy. So the problem with lazy marketing before is just being scaled with AI. The lazy marketing in the past was you're not taking the time to understand your customer, really plan out your campaign and have a big idea behind it, to dial in your offer and make sure your customer's really going to want it. And so, with AI, it's just easier to do that. Like, write me a sequence, and you're still skipping all the hard work. Like, writing has always been 20% of the work, right? The research and the planning and the strategy has always been 80% of the work of doing an effective email campaign. And so I think there's an illusion with AI that you can shortcut the hard part, and you can't. Like, you can have it help you research. You should still be interviewing customers and doing external research. So I think the main problem with AI is just scaling lazy marketing. If you do all your research and you dial that in, and then you want to you keep AI on a tight leash and you want to have it execute the campaign for you, that's fine. But the hard part is still the hard part that people, still want to skip.
So you are saying we should manually do the customer research and relationship building part, and we should use AI only to assist us during the campaign execution.
You can use it for research too. It's a great sounding board. You can have it help you plan your strategy, but it's not push button. It's not like write me a nurture sequence for this audience, assuming it's gonna know all of that. You still need to augment any research with AI, any strategy that AI helps you plan with external research and your own critical thinking and your own creative thinking.
The segmentation part comes in. So how do you see the segmentation part? Like, how do you implement the segmentation part?
Well, typically there are a few ways, right? If you already know your customer, then that's easier to segment. And then there are several touch points throughout their journey to your list where you can segment. You can segment on your form field, by role or industry or pain point, or even like if you're a course creator, by beginner, intermediate, advanced. It really just depends on what you're offering. So there's an opportunity to segment right when they join your list. You can segment in the welcome email, which is like a little bit of older, more common practice to, you know, offer them different types of content that would reflect the intent of different segments, and then they can click it. You can segment that way. You can ask them in a survey in the welcome email or sequence, what categorizes them, what they're most interested in. You can segment that way. So I think those are the two most common ways to segment.
Mhm. So as you have mentioned that you have mostly worked in info and SaaS, what do you think? Like, where do they actually intersect, and what are the things are uncommon between them?
What's common between them?
Yeah.
Between information? I think SaaS could learn a lot from the former, in that there's like a misconception that because it's business to business, and especially in SaaS, that it needs to be stilted and formal and cold. And that's not the case, right? Because behind every other company is a person. You're talking to people at a company. Like, a brand is made up of people, so you're still marketing to people. And I think that's what the common denominator is. You still need to be considering what people care about and approaching it like that way. And a big part of that is having personality in your B2B voice, right? And in the way you execute your emails. So yeah, I think that's the commonality.
I can see Authority Scribe in your back. Like, would you love to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. Authority Scribe is my company, and so I started it about 5 years ago. Yeah, and initially did a lot more copywriting, and then got into messaging and email marketing. And so, yeah, still do a lot of copywriting, messaging, and email marketing for B2B and B2B SaaS brands. So, yeah, the concept is, just being an authority in writing, having a degree in it, and 15 years of experience.
So it's an agency or one-person business?
It's a one-person business, but yeah, definitely plans to expand.
So as you have 15 years of experience, that you know that if you don't hire A plus team players or A plus members who actually know their game, it's very difficult to handle client work, because if you don't match the energy with your team members, and you will start noticing that the client is not happy, the things you are promising, it's not getting delivered, right?
Yeah, I've worked at a lot of agencies, so I've seen the back end and I've seen that play out. Yeah, it's definitely a whole extra beast to tackle, right? Getting the right team and the right dynamics and organizing it all. So I think a lot of that is, picking the right people and not taking shortcuts. And then when you have the right people, treating them well.
How do you see the part of automation? Like, how do you actually execute automation part, or what are the things you follow while applying the automation part?
Automation is like the mechanics of it all, right? Like, people get it wrong, right? A lot. Like, how many times have you bought something and then got another email trying to sell it to you? Or like, I donated to a political candidate, and like then they kept shaming me in their emails that I hadn't donated for months, and so I just unsubscribed. And so I think automation takes thoughtful planning, and it can really help with your segmentation and your personalization. I mean, it's really necessary to both. And so I think automation is essential to effective email marketing.
So as you have mentioned about trend, so what is one email trend you think is overrated?
I mean, I think AI writing your emails, like push button, like, here's our platform. You can do everything in it. You can push a button and write your whole sequence, and then you can, push a button and put the workflow together. And I think that the chasm between AI marketing and AI reality is really wide, and marketers know that. Is, we sit there and we try to make AI work for us every day. It has a lot of limitations still. So I think all the hype that you hear on LinkedIn is really just is hype. It's very helpful. It's very helpful and very cool in a lot of ways. But I think what makes it not cool is, how it's marketed and how different using it really is.
Yeah, we are actually getting sold the idea of AI, that you can use AI everywhere. So people are actually blindly using AI. That's an issue, that let's say if you want to convey a message to the audience, it's not clear. They are using like endless M dashes, they are using endless jargon. That doesn't even make sense. So when you are writing email copy, or when you write email copy for your client, or let's say if you are coaching someone for the email copy, what are the things you would ask them to check, or what are things you would focus on while writing the copy?
Is that if they're using AI?
It's even if it's AI, or even if they are not using AI, if they are focusing only on email copywriting, so how would you help them to master it if you are coaching someone, or if you're writing yourself, like what are the things you will focus on?
Number one, it needs to be about the audience and not the company, and not the sender, which is like a rookie mistake. Like we. Number two is it needs to be curiosity piquing, because you're vying for attention in crowded inboxes. So you need to pique their curiosity and keep piquing it. It needs to have a personality, because that's really what differentiates marketing and content today from everything else because of AI, because things can be duplicated so quickly with AI and channels are being so flooded. The way to stand out now is to have personality. That's the one thing, right? That can't be duplicated. So you have to have personality, especially in B2B. You have to have a good offer, because great copy can't dress up a bad offer. So those are some of the main things. And then, classic in marketing is like, know the pains and goals of your audience. And if you're building this argument of whether you're trying to get them to click an ebook, or you're a coach and you're trying to get them to look at your sales page, you need to come in with their pain point and how you can solve it.
Can you talk about some companies you have worked with?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of companies. I was like the go-to email copywriter for Content Stack and SkillJar, Risk Optics. Did emails for Outliant and like just a lot of Carbon Direct. Yeah, I've had some long relationships with some of those companies too.
So what is one mindset that helps you succeed with email marketing?
Always be learning, especially in email marketing, because with deliverability, you have Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo changing the rules all the time, and then the technology is always changing, and even with even if you're in messaging and writing, AI is disrupting all of that. And so, trying to learn how to incorporate AI so that you can be more efficient. So yeah, you have to always, I think that's true of marketing too. You just have to always be learning.
So you are saying that email marketing is always changing, or even if it's not changing, there are always a scope of learning something new from while working with a brand or while working with another person.
For sure. I mean, every time you you work with a new brand, you learn all about the brand, you create their strategy. So you have to like master their customer, their product, and the brand. And you're supposed to bring in fresh insight and make whatever they're doing better. So you really need to do a lot of deep thinking and learning every time you work with a new brand.
So as you have worked with so many brands and managed their campaign, so can you share a campaign that did not go well?
Yeah, I had a nurture program that I worked on for a SaaS company a couple years ago. And I think why it didn't go well is I didn't get a chance to interview the customers, and they didn't have a lot of customer data. And so flying blind, which was a big lesson for me, not to let that, to insist on interviews or surveys. And then, there were too many cooks in the kitchen. There were like 4 people editing it and changing it. And so even though we didn't start well because we weren't close to the customer, and we didn't end well because we had 4 people basically dictate how, change it. And so needless to say, it didn't perform well.
So as you have mentioned that too many cooks will spoil the food. So like, have you faced it once or multiple times?
It's very common in B2B SaaS because you're often dealing with marketing teams, and there's a lot of, hierarchy. If the VP of marketing doesn't like it, we have to change it, or and they're all worried about pushing it up the chain to the VP or like whoever's the highest person who's going to review it. So they're already making changes in anticipation of what their boss is going to say. And so that's really one of the hard parts about working with teams.
So how your email marketing process looks like? So like let's say someone is approaching you, or let's say you have cold email or DM someone for taking the project, right? So let's say you have honored the client. So how your process looks like after that?
After DMing with a client,
After onboarding your client, let's say he or she agreed to work with you.
But yeah, these days I often start with a messaging guide. And so I'll interview 5 to 10 customers, and with using the jobs to be done framework to reconstruct their buyer's journey and how they talk about it. And that way we have all the key messaging, right? We know what they care about, and we know how to talk about it so it resonates with them. And then I'll go ahead and I'll audit their email marketing, because I need to make sure there aren't deliverability problems that are going to derail anything I do in the messaging strategy department. And so, clean their list, check if their domain is authenticated, check all of their kind of deliverability issues, audit their strategy, and then I'll report all that to them. And then we can move forward once we have the messaging dialed and we've removed any deliverability roadblocks. Then I can go in and do the strategy and write the copy and implement the email sequence.
So, as you know, that 2025 is the year of newsletters. There are so many people who are coming to email marketing, and they are also starting their own newsletter. Right? Earlier, they were totally focused on social media. So, what makes a great newsletter, in your opinion?
Personality, right? It's a relationship. It's a long-term nurture strategy. And so you want to get to know the person, that you want them to feel like they know you. And that's true if you're a B2B brand too, right? Like I've had B2B brands who had like an AI personality behind the newsletter, and that's not, no, really send it from someone in your company, infuse their voice into it, have a lot of personality, make it entertaining so people want to keep coming back. Or, if entertaining doesn't align with your brand, make it really informative. So those are kind of you have to keep people entertained or informed. And then you also have to feel like make it feel like you're building a relationship with them.
In your opinion, have you seen any newsletter which really stands out?
Yeah, The Hustle, HubSpot's The Hustle is a great example of a B2B newsletter that is really funny. And it's a curated newsletter, which those are really common in B2B, especially B2B SaaS. And it's a great example of how to get a curated newsletter right. Granted, they're linking out to all kinds of sources, whereas typically in a B2B or B2B SaaS brand, they are using it to drive traffic to their website. But that's a good lesson. Like maybe mix it up so you're not only showcasing your own content, but you're picking other interesting things from the industry. So you really just want to keep, you want to keep your audience entertained, informed, engaged.
Do you also offer newsletter service?
Oh, yes, I do newsletters for my clients.
And apart from that, like, do you consider newsletter as a business, or do you consider newsletter as a nurturing mechanism?
Both. Yeah, I have a newsletter, B2B recession messaging, where I'm talking, it's very relevant right now because we have these tariffs impacting some industries quite a lot and impacting consumer sentiment. And that expands to sentiment within companies. A lot of companies have slashed marketing budgets or have kind of frozen up in response to all the economic uncertainty, right? And so we're in a bit of a downturn and we have a lot of market uncertainty. And so that's impacting how people spend money, including businesses. So I'm chronicling, how are B2B brands changing their messaging in response to this in their marketing?
So actually, I have also started my own newsletter back in 20 October. Then I have monetized my newsletter. Both of them. Actually, I started with two newsletters. One I started back in October, and another one I started in 24. And I monetized them both. Then I sold one of them. Like one of them was for email marketing, and I sold that. So after that, I came to know that the power of newsletter, because nowadays people see newsletter as a business, not as a nurturing mechanism. So that's why I have started Inside Letter. It's a cohort based newsletter teaching and all. So where I teach people about newsletter and how to grow, scale, monetize a newsletter. So I am just on a mission to make it the biggest newsletter cohort in India. Hope I will be able to make it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. And apart from that, like, as you have talked that you also have a newsletter, like, what do you want to achieve with it?
Like, what do I want to achieve? I am just building a relationship with my audience. It's more of a long-term nurture strategy. I don't have any monetization plans because, it's a temporary subject. Eventually the market will get better, and I don't know what will happen with tariffs. That's not gonna hopefully be around forever. Those two things are, a lot of people aren't a big fan of either of those, and so it's more of like a temporary newsletter, and I'll probably shift the subject and take it off LinkedIn eventually.
All right. With 15 years of experience, what are the major red flags you have seen in your clients?
The major red flags. What are the major red flags? So always, a rushed client is often, impatience is a sign that the project won't go well. Unfortunately, people who want to try to get you to lower your price significantly, usually the project won't go well. And then, anytime it's like dealing with people, right? So if you meet someone and they're pushy or demanding or rude, then that's not going to be a good experience as in any kind of relationship, including a professional one.
All right. So, do you have any suggestion for the newcomers in email marketing?
Any advice? Yeah, I think learn everything at first before you niche. So learn about deliverability, strategy, automation, master the whole field before you niche. Start building your authority early. Find your tribe, join communities, and find a network because you're going to need all those things to be successful. You're going to need a strong network. You're going to need authority, and then you're going to need to master your niche. But even when you master it, you're going to need to know how the other parts work.
So, do you have anything to offer to the audience who are listening to this podcast?
Yes, go to my LinkedIn. In the bio, you can subscribe to B2B recession messaging, and then you can find out what brands are doing right now to pivot their messaging and marketing in response to tariffs and economic uncertainty.
So, really, it was really amazing to have you in this podcast, and you have a lot of experience. You have done a lot of projects. So, whatever you have shared, it will be helpful for the people who are listening to this. And apart from that, if you have anything to share, you can share.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. This was lovely. And yeah, I wish you the best. And with your new newsletter, that's awesome. And I'll see you around LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.